Hello, guys. Welcome to this new edition of Mind Podcast. This is Aadit, and today I have the two Mehras with me. Introducing Kushal Mehra, the host of Behind Charvak Podcast, podcaster, our good friend at Mind Podcast. And today, before I even introduce both of them, they would like to be introduced as cricket enthusiasts first, before anything else, because this podcast is going to be all about Shane Warne, 90s cricket, and our cricket fandom. And our second panelist, returning champion, lawyer Nikhil Mehra. But again, before lawyer, he's a cricket enthusiast first. So, Nikhil, last time की तरह हम लोग मतलब we are not even going to add, subtract anything. This is going to be purely about cricket. So, anyone who is offended, anyone who is sad, मतलब this is your chance. Log off. Otherwise, you'll be very, very annoyed with us for the next 45 minutes.
The king has died. Yeah, the king has died. This can
Yeah.
only be about the king. He is
Yes.
Warne, man. Nobody else compares to Warne.
So, in case everyone has been under a rock or I don't know where and have missed all the news last week, Shane Warne, one of the best leg spinners, if not the best leg spinners ever to
The best.
bowl. मतलब ये मैं राजदीप हूं ही नहीं, लेकिन दोनों गावस्कर आ गए मेरे साथ. No, I'm kidding. No, but you're right. The best, absolutely. If the reason I said one of the best is because हमने सबको देखा नहीं है. But Shane won 700.
क्या बात कर रहे हो यार? अपने सबको देख. Who is in like? I'm sorry. By what
We'll come to that.
Leg spinner other than Shane Warne, even great cricketer.
No, I agree.
One great leg spinner other than Warne, who's an orthodox leg spinner, not medium pacers masquerading as a leg with the label of a leg spinner.
Boom! Shots have already been fired. 90 seconds. No,
I am not going to take bullshit about the king. I mean, no way. This man is the reason why leg spin. Everybody wanted to bowl leg spin for 20 years.
No. There are
no one else could do it.
There are terminologies like certain balls that he bowled. Like people did not know the existence of those. Like in pop culture before 1993, before Shane Warne started bowling them. Like Jared,
I'm not quite certain Warne also knew because a lot of it was just mind play, right? This is the joy
mind
of
play,
Warne.
right? So 700
He had a new ball. Every series is like I got a new ball.
Exactly. So 708 wickets in test matches, 293 in one dayers. Actually, the test match performances were so impactful that a lot of people don't even talk about the one day, but 293 wickets is no mean achievement.
In only 194 ODIs. So that's a wicket and a half per ODI.
With Glenn McGrath on the other side, who was destroying top orders for fun.
World Cup semi-finals single-handedly won. I call them single-handedly won. And a World Cup final where he's the man of the match because of his bowling. 4 for 33 in the 99 World Cup final.
Not even that.
Missed the 2003 World Cup because he had a diuretic. What a guy. What a guy.
Yeah. Otherwise, he would have had a third World Cup final too in 2003. No doubt about it.
Won that World Cup sitting down.
Yeah, and I mean, and so amazing record. Proud Victorian, loved his stories about Melbourne and everything. But more importantly, a magician that we absolutely love. So, Kushal and Nikhil, we've already sort of started a discussion on. But what does Shane Warne mean to you guys? Kushal, you go first, and then Nikhil.
Yeah. So, for me, look, he was a great bowler, no doubt about it. But when you watch sport is entertainment. So for me, what stood out for him was what goes beyond the art of leg spin bowling. So obviously, as a bowler, I remember this famous incident. So he had retired from cricket pretty much, and then IPL came along, and he was the captain of the Rajasthan Royals. And I remember this famous comment made by I don't remember who said. He's like, "Can you believe that Shane Warne has not bowled a single ball in the nets, and he just lands straight into the IPL, and the first ball he bowls, then he has to start doing a little bit of bowling." Before the IPL comes, and he's landing it smack bang on the first time he comes after being out of cricket throughout the period, and he was not interested in doing anything. He was not bowling. Secondly, as far as his craftsmanship is concerned, it's pretty well known that he hated John Buchanan because John Buchanan would make him basically bowl in the nets. And
Greg Chappell का दूसरा भाई था.
Yeah, and you don't bowl on the nets, you go and bowl in the match. I will do my thing. And so, but the loving aspect for me about Shane Warne was every time he bowled, right? It was as if something was happening. It was an event. It was something. It was like drama. I don't know. A lot of people used to call him Bollywood or Hollywood, whatever he was called. I don't remember. He was
Yeah,
called Hollywood.
Hollywood. Yeah.
Yeah, and those expressions like "Arey तूने इसको out नहीं दिया? How dare you not give it out?" He was so close. He was so obviously out. That's the endearing factor for me. That's what I loved about him. He made you watch the sport, which
Yeah.
nobody else did. I mean, there are, which is very ironical because in my case, the three favorite sports persons that I had in my life was Tendulkar, Warne, and Mike Tyson. And Mike Tyson, obviously, for different reasons. Tendulkar for different reasons, but Warne, it was just the personality. If there ever was a thorough entertainer in the history of cricket, I would say it was Shane Warne.
No, but I think that's why Tendulkar and Vaughan made for such compelling viewing, because they were two sports persons completely, like chalk and cheese, but both had the great respect for each other. I think Shane Vaughan has shouted from the rooftops that Tendulkar is one of the best batsmen he's bowled to, and Tendulkar has praised Vaughan as well. And they were
Was
trying to
that a
outfox
disease or
each other.
what? What is with your one off? One never said Tendulkar's one off. Tendulkar, he said he is the best. McGrath
He's
said
the
he is
best.
the best. Not
Yeah.
one of the best. Adit, stop this one off business.
नहीं नहीं वॉन ने फिर 3-4 साल
आज
बाद
निखिल
लारा
मूड
को
में
भी
है.
उसमें ऐड कर दिया था.
Stop hedging your bets, buddy. These guys who had that kind of respect for each other. Aussies did.
No, they did. They did. Hey, but coming to you, Nikhil, like the what so Vaughan's legacy, right? It's not just an today I'm also going to show a few videos of some of his best deliveries, that Andrew Strauss ball, that Mike Getting ball, and we'll talk about that later, right? But one of Vaughan's greatest legacy was he refused to give up or like continued to reinvent himself. Like 2005 Ashes May, I heard an Australian commentator say somewhere, Vaughan had single-handedly determined that he will not let England win the Ashes. Like he literally was the difference between Australia coming this close and England winning ultimately. Without Vaughan, England would have won quite comfortably. He got 40 wickets and
With the
stuff.
bat as well, by the way, in that series. He
Yeah.
was a phenomenally important lower order batsman in that
So,
series.
and one instance I want to quote before I come to you, like what Kushal said, he was a showman. I was watching this amazing 2 hour tribute that Fox Cricket had, and I don't know if that tribute or someone else, where someone said that Vaughan was such a showman. One time he appealed like his heart out, and the umpire said not out, and then he went up to the umpire and said, "Good decision." That was sliding down leg, but he was so passionate and so convincing that even the umpire was second guessing, "कि यार मैंने क्या किया?" So, Nikhil, what does one mean to you as a sportsman, and what do you think? Like, I mean, we can be rest assured that there is not going to be ever another Shane Warne again, right? But
Hmm.
what do you make of him revolutionize leg spin and the changes that he brought? Are they here to stay, or do you think that now we have entered a time without Shane Warne where he's no longer as a mentor? Do you think leg spin sort of dying, like going back to what it was pre-Warne?
So if you can bowl it as well as Vaughan, you'll be successful in any era. This is the
Yeah.
thing with Shane Warne is that he was always the most important person in the room. You
Yeah.
could go into a cricket stadium, a full cricket stadium. Shane Warne was the most important person there. Everybody's eyes were on Shane Warne because the art that he was executing was different. But it's not, as Kushal said, it's not just the art. Warne is always up to something, right? I mean, that was the joy with it. If you keep watching his expressions, keep watching his body language, he's up to something or the other all the time. And so this is why he was able to constantly reinvent himself because he had that ego about him. He was always the most important person in the room. Had to get better, had to keep changing things about himself to be the most significant person there. Right? So
Absolutely.
one of my great regrets. So the first thing I will say about Shane Warne is I can't think of another bowler with whom I can watch maybe 80, 90 deliveries that I call magic balls. They're not good wicket taking deliveries, are they? They're the kind of deliveries you look at and go like, how the heck did he bowl that?
So
And
so let's look let's
one minute,
let's look at
one
one
minute,
of them. No,
one
you
minute.
can talk through. Yeah,
Okay,
go
sure.
on. No, I'm saying
There are
talk through this
guys who
delivery.
sure.
Yeah, I
Sure,
was
sure.
just going to show this. Yeah. So this is the one. This is the ball that made him absolutely famous.
First ball in Test cricket in England for Shane Warne. And he's done it. He started off with the
What a champion!
No, 1 second, Anand. So the thing with that ball, and this is the interesting bit about Warne. When Warne first played Test cricket against India,
Yeah.
right? So his first Test match is 1 for 150. His second Test match is none for 78 in Adelaide, right? But the commentators, and I remember listening to this on radio. It wasn't telecast live. It used to be on radio for us. Harsha Bhogle was commenting, and he was talking about how the Australian commentators were talking about you can hear the ball, right? You can hear the ball come out of the hand. The amount of fizz he would put on the ball, you could hear it come out of the hand. And you'd hear that whirring sound. And that's why you'd get this drift, you'd get this spin. He didn't have control in that series. And he was in and out. Do you know what his career before he started? So this is a prodigy. He's introduced as a prodigy to us in 1992 series. But he played like 5 or 6 in total first-class games. Not really distinguished himself. Got an Australian A tour, been all right, not great, but Aussie cricket had that mentality. If you get a good leg spinner, that is such a phenomenal aggressive option, right? So for Australian cricket, for example, Nathan Lyon's done phenomenally well. He's some would call a great spinner, but he's an off spinner. He just doesn't, he will never grab the attention of the public. They will always look at him with that suspicion of, isne kaise le li 3 wicket? Yeah? He's an off spinner. That aggression isn't there. That skill level isn't there. So they pushed him through, and he barely had, enough coaching, enough training, and enough hours under the belt. But he did that. You know how he did it? It's like his whole story is crazy. It's his mentor, Terry
Jennings. Terry Jennings. Yeah.
Now, do you know his story? Terry Jennings comes out of jail because he's been in jail for 2.5, 3 years for embezzlement. Right? He's been in jail for embezzlement. He comes out, and within the first week of coming out of jail, he runs into Shane Warne. And so they're really kindred souls because Warne has that edge to him, right? Throughout his life, he's had that slight, I wouldn't even say bad boy because he was actually a really, really nice guy and a bit of a larrikin edge to him, right? The Aussie larrikin kind of edge to him. And so he runs into this guy who understands him, who can understand the mentality, but is very strict with a very, very strong disciplinarian. Warne goes into domestic cricket. Do you know what his average is for Victoria?
Very high. I forget. Yeah.
34. It's an abysmal average. His test match average is 25.
Perfect.
Which a fast bowler would be proud of. Which like a South African fast bowler would be proud of. 25 is a gun average to have. So the whole story around him is, it's quite incredible how it sort of builds up, right? But they hit a phase when we all knew we've got a genius in our hands, and I don't use that word lightly.
Yeah,
that's like a proper bona fide genius, game-changing genius who can win matches on his own, right? And not 1 or 2 matches. Like you might win 5, 6. He can win dozens of matches on his own, or be the single biggest contributor to that victory on the bowling department, despite such a strong Australian fast bowling attack, right? So we knew this, and once that happened, every 6 months, the stories just kept coming. I mean, Warne would be up to something or the other, doing something or the other, getting caught in just his underwear and being on the front page of Daily Mail. Taking baked beans and toast with him to India because he can't eat anything else, and the border guards get trophy of that. All kinds of. It just kept coming. Every third woman in Australia had an affair with Shane Warne, and England. Like this, there would be a steady stream of these women, and none of them spoke ill of him. None of them did.
So there is. But Kushal, I want to ask you something. So we talk about Shane Warne. One of his defining moments was like this Sri Lanka series where like he was smashed around, and then suddenly he comes back and takes 3 wickets for nothing in one of the test matches, and Australia wins by 16 runs. To which Arjuna Ranatunga, whom he had a standing feud with, commented saying, "We lost the series to a bowler whose average is more than 300." Because at that time, Warne's test average was 300. But then he comes and, he cements his place, West Indies, England, and so forth. What do you think, like, what is your first memory of looking at Warne, and when do you think that, wow, this is someone special that we are seeing?
Well, obviously, my first memory of looking at Warne was the ball of the century, but my first memory was not what Warne did. So we missed that part in the video, but how Gatting reacted. So you remember how Gatting reacted, and Gatting's expression was pretty good delivery.
Yeah.
No, it's not actually. Initially, he doesn't realize. So, Gatting commentary to this is, I didn't. I thought I heard something. I didn't know what it was because it just clips the off stump, and Merv Kitchen, who's the umpire, just gives him a nod.
No, it was Ricky Bird, and Richie Benoit famously said, "Getting has no idea what has just happened." the
So to
master
me,
of
that was my
understatement.
first memory of Warne. But obviously, beyond that, I think my most endearing memory of Warne, yeah, I would say is the Basit Ali incident.
Yeah,
I don't know if you guys remember that.
That is the
yeah,
most
So
yeah,
classic Warm thing, man.
yeah, so the last over of the day, 4 balls done, nothing to do. Vaughn is bored, calls Ian Healy, comes for a chat. Ian Healy's like, what am I supposed to do? They do nothing. Like Ian Healy recently said, they literally had a chat about nothing. They're just wasting time because Basit Ali had this habit of wasting a lot of time
yeah,
and he was like annoying the Aussies because of that.
yeah.
And then just before going, Vaughn asks him, what do you want me to do? And Ian Healy says, just rip a leggy. And basically that's about it. And he rips a leggy. I mean, could anyone play it worse than how Basit Ali played that? What the hell was that?
It was probably one of the worst shots I've ever seen. I'm trying to.
Yeah.
There is a very patchy video. I was trying to load a good video for our folks, but I have to show this video. I think it's probably one of the worst shots ever. But I think that was one, right. He played with
Drama.
the folks mentally.
Yeah. It was drama. I mean,
Yeah, it
this
was.
is beautiful. Yeah, this moment. They're literally not talking about anything, and then this happens. I mean, this is just legendary stuff, man. Look at how Basit Ali plays. I mean, what the hell was that?
You know, I'm going to say something in Basit Ali's defense, and that is really a trait about all of Vaughan's bowled around the leg dismissal, because there are a ton of them. They're not one, there are tons of them.
Yeah,
Just look at how full that ball is.
yeah,
Right? From that much length, you do not expect in 100 years it's going to turn enough to hit the stumps. Right? So, and you can't get your leg to as easily because it's wide enough. But you
yeah.
would think that even if it was shorter, you do the forward press and you try to kill the ball. But with it being that full, you don't expect that it's eventually going to go hit the stumps. That's the only thing I'll say in his defense. But one is
So
all the time. Such a full length,
No,
and it will hit the stumps.
I think one thing, and this is Ian Chappell said about this, that Sachin Tendulkar asked Ravi Shastri, how do you counter Vaughan's leg spin outside, that he would bowl like this? And Ravi said that my way was the defense because I have the reach, but you don't have that because of the height difference between me and you. So you'll have to attack. And that is one of the reasons why when 1998 Shane Warne came and that famous Chennai test where Sachin attacked was because of this. But again, you have to be as good of a player as Sachin was to take an attacking option against one because he's going to outfox you otherwise or get you stumped. And in the same test, if you remember, Dravid was pushed into a shell and he actually was out the same way where Shane Warne boarded outside the rough and Dravid was bowled. So you had to be a Sachin to take on Warne that way. But
yeah,
and a lot of people say, "Arey, Sidhu did it first." I agree, Sidhu did it first, but at that time, Warne
हेलो
was not
सिद्धू
bowling
नहीं
a.
लोग भूल गए कामली ने भी अटैक किया था वॉन को
नहीं
लोग
नहीं वो
कामली को
टेस्ट
भूल
मैच की
गए
बात कर रहा हूं. No, I'm talking about that 1998 test match where
अच्छा
Sidhu started it. But at that time, Warne was not bowling from the rough, right? He was bowling over the wicket, and it was a lot sooner in the test match. This is when the ball got older, started to turn more, and the wicket started to crumble. Is when Sachin started to attack. Um, what is interesting with Shane Warne is that this is the Warne we saw in the 90s. The Warne post late 90s that came also developed this flipper and the zooter and started bowling faster, right? Like his quicker ones were really quick as time got on.
but
So he
didn't he
almost
lose his flipper now because of his shoulder he lost his flipper but then he developed
no.
the slider
Yeah, which is, they call it the slider or the zooter,
the slider that
depending
came
on
out of the front of the hand, right? That's what he
front
used
of
to
the
bowl.
hand, right? Exactly. But and what happened was, and then we're gonna in a short while we'll show the Andrew Strauss delivery. I think where he bamboozled the batsman was the spin it took at the pace at which it took, because people thought that because it was spinning this much, it would not be bowled as fast as they thought it would be, but yet it would develop some sort of pace.
That's the
So
fizz. That's the
yeah, that's the
fizz.
phase, right? So Nikhil, then you get to Shane Warne, the Test match bowler, right? But there is also the Shane Warne, the ODI bowler, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And I don't want to talk about the Tri Series in Australia
Are
and
we in
stuff
a
because
rush, Aadit?
no, we aren't. I'll come back to the Test matches. No, I'm
Oh,
coming back. The reason I'm going in chronological order, so I want to talk about the 1996 and the 1999 World Cup, and then we'll go to the Test matches again. Um, how big was Warne, and how crucial was he to Australia winning those two World Cups?
they didn't win both World Cups. They lost
I'm
the
sorry.
96.
I meant going to the final and then winning the 1999 World Cup.
If I'm not mistaken, he's amongst the top two highest wicket takers of the 96 World Cup.
Yeah,
He's in that list in 99 as well.
yeah,
Top two or three. Uh, I don't see the pitches in India, even in the 2011 World Cup, they were slow turners. Not very conducive to very high run scoring. So if you remember before the 96 Cup, we thought World Cup in India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, 300, 320 every time. And it barely
yeah,
ever happened. Barely ever happened, right?
yeah,
It's only Sri Lanka who, because of their super attacking cricket front up, was able to have high run rates and post big totals, but nobody else posted really big totals.
yeah.
Right? So these pitches were slower. So on a slower pitch, and this is one of the biggest sorrows I have about the whole contest between Tendulkar and Vaughan. On a slow pitch, the flipper, and 96 he had the flipper, right? So
Yeah.
he is absolutely right. Vaughan's shoulder goes in 99, right? And after 99, he doesn't really bowl the flipper again. Doesn't really properly bowl the flipper again. So all his flipper dismissals, if you go to his greatest dismissals, are all in the 90s, pretty much. The odd one after that, which is a surprise element, but that shooting pace that he used to get off the pitch, that had disappeared post 99. Anyway, that doesn't happen on an Indian wicket. That you need a firmer wicket for, right? So his weapons were different. Against West Indies in that semi-final, I mean, people talk about matches that are dead and buried. It was finished. I mean, West Indies were at one point 140 for 1 or 2, chasing 213. By the way, Australia managed to get to that 210, 213 kind of total only because of the partnership that Stuart Law and Michael Bevan managed to put up after they were
Yeah.
crushed early on.
They were 15
Right?
for 4.
Yeah, so they managed to get a 210, 210, 212. So that's what I remember. And Lara was on the rampage, right? It was Steve Waugh who bowled an absolute beauty to hit Lara's off stump from right arm round. And after that, of course, there are jitters, but you've got Richie Richardson. You've got
Yeah.
Keith Atherton. You've got a lot of. Keith Atherton had the worst World Cup in living memory.
It was like
Nobody's
it
ever had
was,
a worse. Not even Mehra Jayawardene in 2003 was as bad as Keith Atherton in
no, there was one person, Inzamam ul Haq. I think he had, because it was,
2003. In
yeah, it was
2003.
all in binaries, 0-1-0-1.
Same with Keith Atherton in this World Cup, right? So he's still, but he's still a name. I mean, he was big. There were others who were there who could get you these runs, and he's starting to now get close. And now comes Vaughan, and the spell he comes up with is 5 overs, 3 maidens, 5 runs, and 3 wickets. I mean, that's just ridiculous. It is
And in the
ridiculous.
semi-final.
This is
Yeah.
Mohali. This is Mohali. That this never used to be a grip and turn kind of track. That track in particular had a lot of bounce and pace in it, and that's why the West Indies fast bowlers had hurt Australia as much as they did. So he basically thought them out. But there is a phase with Vaughan in ODI cricket, right? The only other parallel to that I can think of is Wakar, where once they're getting a grip on a game, once they're starting to get a grip on a batting lineup, you know that this match is going only one direction.
Yeah.
He will get the wickets he needs. He will slow the runs down. Australia will choke you. They will win. Like Wakar, once that reverse swing used to start, you'd be like, yeah, he's going to get wickets. He's going to get the 3-4 wickets he needs to finish you off from it. So Warne had that. And then the 99 World Cup. I mean, the 99 World Cup. That semi-final, again, Australia somehow get to 210, to 213. I think.
That's what I was at 213. It's eerie. It's the same
And
number.
then South Africa have the perfect start. Absolute perfect start. You talk about the ball of the century. You remember the ball to Herschel Gibbs?
Oh yeah.
Unbelievable.
That is my favorite ODI delivery. Because that's where and it's not just the ball, and this is what I talk about one. Look at his reaction after the wicket.
Yes.
He gets that whole team going. He gets them believing, he gets them pushing. Right? 4 for 29 in that semi-final, 4 for 33 in the World Cup final. Look,
that
Warne.
was that in fact when Adit asked me, that was one of my most endearing memories of Warne too.
So
This
just to
particular
add to
wicket.
that, Kushal, it's not just the Gibbs wicket. He takes the first three, right? So they go from 52 for no loss to 62 for three or something, and it's
Yeah.
Gibbs, Kirsten, and I think Cronier, right? So he rips that middle order out, top and middle order out, and he eventually gets callous at the end, in the later part of the innings. These are four big wickets to take, man. I mean, this did everything right. His feet were in the right position. His bat was
Yeah.
coming straight. Gibbs's Gibbs's back face is a little closed, so
Yeah.
he's got less of a chance to make contact with the ball. But totally beaten because of the face, beaten in the flight, beaten by the spin.
Yeah, for me, like I was always a Warne fan, but this
Really
like
is.
cemented me why he's one of the greatest Australian
Oh,
cricketers ever.
this particular semi-final, we were watching at home.
Straight to slip.
Me and my sister. She was supporting South Africa. I was supporting
Good.
Australia, and this was going horribly. It was going horribly.
Yeah.
And suddenly, I mean, because you just knew, McGrath hasn't done it. Odd, because McGrath was phenomenal in that World Cup, and we understood that best because he killed us in the India-Australia game. Took our big three in one.
Still
over.
hurts me.
First 3 overs, big three gone. Right, finished
Yeah.
us off. He was phenomenal, but they survived him. They scored of him. They were at 4.5 and over. And I was just thinking, there's still Shane Keith Warne. I mean, Warne has to come through now. Big time players don't fail you, and Warne was the biggest of the big time players. I just wanted to touch something, right? Gavaskar talks about 800 wickets, Murli being better. Murli has 176 wickets against Bangladesh and Zimbabwe of that time. Warne has 20.
Kushal and I were just talking
Warne
about
has
that.
25. Warne took big, important wickets.
No, and I think what
Not
Gavaskar
just that
said. Chalo,
factor. Yeah, no.
he-
Just to add on that, Nikhil, it's not just that. Vaughan had a McGrath. Vaughan had a Gillespie.
Yeah, they're
Vaughan
going to
had a
take more
Brett
wickets.
Lee. They
Yeah,
so,
They're going to
but
take more wickets.
Murli had a Chamindavas, Ajanta Mendes, Kumar Dharmasena, and later
Yeah,
on
Ajanta
Rangana
Mendes
Hera.
comes much later. But
No,
you're
no,
right.
much
Kumar
later.
Dharmasena was there.
And not even that. If anyone can name who was the second pacer for Sri Lanka after Vas in every single series,
Pushpa
I
Kumara.
will give them.
Pushpa Kumara.
अरे हर एक सीरीज में
Robin
बदलते थे.
Joyce.
There was a Vikram Singh,
Joyce,
Sujita
Joyce.
De Silva.
Kumara, all those guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
But they were decent bowlers, right? I mean, so listen, if you can pull this one up, I'm going to tell you a little story about this one dismiss because I remember this from my childhood. There's a flipper that Warne bowls to Andrew Jones. To bowl him
No,
out,
I don't have the
And-
Andrew Jones one, but Nikhil, my friend, you're reading my mind because I did have the flipper to share next. But this is the one that he bowls to Richardson.
Right,
And
so
this
the
is one of
Richardson flipper. I'll tell you, the Richardson flipper is actually not as good as the Jones flipper. But even this,
Yeah.
now the problem with it, so show the ball and I'll tell you about this after that. Right, so this is his first great test match performance. You talked about that Lanka test match. He actually had a horrible test match, but took 3 out of his 4 wickets in the last few overs after it was completely pitch dark in Colombo, right? So that's why Ranatunga was obviously pissed off with him a little bit.
Yeah.
Richie Richardson, you know how he set him up? He gave him 2 half-tracking leg spinners, which Richardson smashed to the boundary, square of the wicket, because he was right on top of the ball. And then he bowled him. This was his first flipper. He's never had the guts to bowl the flipper in international cricket before this.
Yeah.
It was a difficult delivery to control. You could end up bowling it off the pitch. Right? That's the joy of the man. But the Andrew Jones flipper is my favorite. You know why? Because he bowls him 2 flippers, purposely not particularly good, short and slowish. And Jones rocks out of the back foot and smashes him through mid-wicket. And then he bowls him the perfect flipper, the kind that knocks the stumps out of the ground. He was a chess player, man. He was a heck of a bowler, chess player.
Absolutely, and I think what he was also not a conventional cricketer. He was a very old school cricketer, right? Like all the Aussies have said that his diet that he had before and after the match of pizzas, beers, and what have you not was completely not recommended by any physio, any dietitian. But he didn't give a shit. He was who he was, and he didn't bowl as much in the nets as we talked about, and I want to talk about the IPL, but that we're going to talk about is the last because we want to talk about his career in the Test matches and ODIs first before we talk about what he did after, because that too is equally significant. But Shane Warne, like of course, Englishmen and Australia was dominating the Ashes by then. But Shane Warne developed this penchant of not only giving them back as a fast bowler, he was also bamboozling them as this phenomenal like spinner that Englishmen had no clue for about 10, 12 years, right? In 2005, they even came up with a robot to mimic like a bowling machine to that sort of mimic Shane Warne, right? So do you think he put that extra fizz on the Ashes? The Ashes was never dominated by a spinner for a long, long time before Shane Warne came.
But that's what I was telling you right at the start. You tell me a spinner, tell me a leg spinner that you can put in the top 50 greatest cricketers before Warne. Tell me for his leg spin. And like I
Yeah,
said, not leg spinners masquerading as medium pacers. Sorry, medium pacers masquerading as leg spinners. Chandra was too fast. He wasn't a proper leg spinner in that. An
yeah,
orthodox leg spinner. Kumble was the same.
yeah.
Right? Subhash Gupte may have been one of the greats, but he never had the record for it.
Yeah.
Maybe Richie Beno with 236 test wickets.
Hmm.
He's kind of up there. Abdul Qadir, reasonable record. No, I wouldn't call him an all-time great. Mushtaq Ahmed was setting up for it, but never really made it. It's only one. So if you look at the Ashes, Australia lost the Ashes throughout the 80s, but they won it back for the first time in 89 without one. Right?
Yeah.
The next Ashes comes up in 93, and that's when the Gatting ball happens. And he goes on and takes, I think, 35 wickets in that test match, right? 4 wickets in 6 tests in that test match. So firmly establishes himself after the West Indies tour. Right? And then after that, he tormented. So he always had a bunny, right? So early bunnies was Stewart and Nasser Hussain. Although it's unfair to call Nasser Hussain a bunny because Nasser did make a reasonable number of runs against Australia. But Alex Stewart could not read the combo of the leg spinner and the flipper and the slider. He could not read it.
Yeah.
There's tons of these dismissals of LBW bowled where he's getting bowled, getting ready to cut the ball.
Yeah.
Right?
Or feeling outside the off stump because he can't read the conventional leg
He's
spinner.
about to cut the ball and he's getting hit on the pad because he just can't read it.
And on a lighter note, no better example to say that Braun brought out the best out of everyone as his hat-trick ball. David Boone displayed more athleticism than he has in his entire career by
You're
falling
being
spread
unfair
eagle.
again. You're being absolutely unfair. David Boone is one of the
Yeah.
finest short legs.
Oh, he is. He is. No. This is a joke that was on Australian TV as well. That Warne probably pushed Booney to like go spread eagle. Like the joke they were making is he would probably dive only as much if he saw a can of beer or something.
If I'm
But
not mistaken, same innings of a fast bowler. In
Yeah.
that same innings, Boone takes a short leg catch of a full-blooded flick.
yeah.
That's insane. I mean, that's insane. Of a
And
full-blooded
no,
flick. I remember him doing this and catching and holding on.
no, but I think you're right because Boone and Sehwag had that too. Sehwag was not like built the most athletically, but he was one of the finest catchers. And I think Boone and Sehwag, they all had great hand-eye coordination when it comes to anticipating the ball or catching. And you saw that with their batting and their catching. So Kushal, we were talking about Warne lighting up the Ashes and how no spinner had dominated the Ashes before Warne the same way in the last sort of many years, right? And then if you look at it, the Ashes is also dominated by a few sort of players. Like it was Botham in the 80s, who sort of was the huge difference between England and Australia, why England kept winning. And then Warne comes in, and then Warne and McGrath, but especially Warne dominates through the 90s and 2000s. And 2005, he would have run away with the Ashes, except Kevin Peterson sort of stopped him in the last match. Otherwise, who knows what would have happened if Peterson had not countered Warne the way he did. So his impact on the Ashes, and then we'll talk about his subsequent career. And I want to talk a little bit about what Mr. Gavaskar also said, but after this.
Look, for me, his impact on the Ashes, obviously, you cannot debate that. But by the time Vaughan had come into his element, which is 1995, I know he had a huge contribution. I think he got 30 odd wickets even in the 93 Ashes, if I remember correctly. I mean, don't quote me on that. But the point is that did he have an impact on the Ashes? Yes. More than Vaughan the player, I think it was Vaughan the personality that had an impact. It's just the English team at that time, they would just capitulate, man. I mean, they were beaten before they entered the field, and which is why the 2005 Ashes is such a fantastic spectacle when it comes to an average cricketing fan, because one of the biggest reasons was that a lot of new players that had entered that side did not carry that fear or the baggage uh, of the past. So
And
to
just
me,
two
Vaughan's
people.
biggest impact on the Ashes was again the drama element that Vaughan used to bring. And if you look at it, the English fans, I don't think so any Aussie player was ever loved the way when they were playing against England in England
Yeah.
as Shane Warne was.
It's the same adulation that Sachin gets in Australia when India used to play in Australia when Sachin was around. That they would boo the players, but when Sachin came to bat, they would all give him a standing ovation
No,
because
no,
they
no.
like.
I don't think it's the same. I don't think it's the same. I think there's a cultural difference here. Adit.
Yeah,
They respect Tendulkar as the GOAT bat of his generation. The GOAT bat
right,
since Bradman, pretty much, right?
right.
But the English loved Vaughan. They
Yeah.
absolutely loved Vaughan, the personality, they loved him as much for his off-field antics as much as for his on-field antics because that he just did things. He kept doing things that
He
kept him in the
he
press.
had the personality of a footballer, the
No,
demeanor
no,
of a fast bowler, and
it's not the
would
And
do
I
that.
personality.
think,
It's not the
and this was the
personality of a
phase when he
footballer.
was dating Liz Hurley too, right?
No, that's much later. That's much
Much
later. But
later.
they fell in love with him from the start. He was a larrikin. He was a lot of fun. He came to Hampshire in the 90s. He was there throughout, captaining Hampshire, winning trophies with them. And he was because county cricket is a very intimately community-based form of the sport, right? It's not unlike Ranji, which can be a little distinguished because this is club cricket essentially. It's very
Mhm.
community-based. So they used to have this thing of Vaughan was the most down-to-earth, helpful genius that they'd ever seen. Unlike Lara, when Lara was playing with Warwickshire, he was the most successful county foreigner in county cricket at that time. I mean, Lara was phenomenal for Warwickshire, but Lara always had this reputation of being a star, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
he had this aura about him.
he wants the fancy car. He wants to be a bit standoffish. He wants the better room. Vaughan wasn't like that. Vaughan would build a community wherever he was. So they
Yeah,
loved him. They genuinely loved him. And the greatest ode that they could give to him was on that last day in the 2005 Ashes series. The English fans were chanting, "We wish you were English. We wish you were English." They loved him. They absolutely,
they love him.
so their love for him is actually a more personal connect than Australian fans' respect for Tendulkar. I mean, their respect for Tendulkar is immense, but it's not
Probably,
that
yeah.
because Tendulkar isn't that kind of magnetic. See, with Tendulkar, let me put it this way to you. To me, Federer, Tendulkar are two geniuses, okay? But
Yeah.
I consider them geniuses for the strokes that they play. So I want to watch them mid-stroke. With Shane Warne, as Kushal has already, I want to have the camera on Warne 24/7 because something is about to happen. Some craziness, some madness is about to happen. He'll be sitting on the boundary line, right, in
Yeah.
his floppy hat, and he'll be up to something or the other with a fan over there or something or the other. I mean, he is just so much personality. And look at what he
Let,
got away with. I'll think of this. This guy took money from a bookie. He took drugs,
yeah.
diuretic, banned substance. I wouldn't say drugs, banned substance. And yet nobody calls him a match fixer. Nobody calls him a cheat. Right?
Yeah.
Nobody calls him those things because his personality was you could just trust Vaughan. He made a mistake.
So
You could trust the fact that he's as capable of making a mistake on these things as he is honest about his cricket.
I want to show a clip, guys, a very short clip that kind of shows the personality of Shane Warne. Okay, this is from the 1998-1999 Ashes, where England, post Ashes, there used to be a tri-series in Australia, and England is playing Australia, and there is a lot of crowd trouble. Okay, people are throwing
Was in
water
a
bottles,
position
and crowds used to be quite nasty back in the day.
having been hit
And,
or
and look, I mean, I'm going to forward this. This is a long clip, and English players are saying
before
what to do,
from
and
seats
someone
Aadit,
goes in and calls in
it's
Shane
gone
Warne
to
to calm the
Shane
crowd.
Warne.
You know what the funniest bit in this is? Not this bit.
It's
When
it's
he's
coming.
about
It's
to go
coming.
to the cloud. That's the
Yeah,
funniest one. Just see
yeah.
what he does then. The guy's a joker,
There you
man.
go.
That's why I love him. He wears a helmet to go to the crowd.
I'm saying, what a guy, what a character. Like, what a
I
character.
love him, man. He's
Yeah,
such an amazing
Look at the build
personality.
of him. This is a guy who's smoking 30 cigarettes a day at that time, right? Whichever restaurant he has ever gone to, right, a gourmet restaurant for pizza, he carries with him a box of pineapples because he loves pineapple on his pizza. So he gets this fancy gourmet pizza that the chef has specially prepared and he starts sprinkling pineapples on it. Like
Yeah.
Warne is lovable, man. He's lovable.
He yesterday, I think Ro Belinda, the famous Twitter account. I think Ro Belinda posted. This is probably Cricket Australia, but Ro Belinda posted on YouTube. And if you guys don't know who Ro Belinda is, shame on yourself for calling yourself a cricket fan, because he's probably has one of the best cricket archives on Australian cricket since time immemorial. But he
Not
posted a
just on, I
5 minute
think he has the best cricket archives in the history of the human race period.
human race period.
Seriously,
Yeah,
yeah. Seriously.
unbelievable guy. So there is a 5 minute clip of Warne talking about pizza on Channel 9. India and Australia were playing, and Warne is talking passionately about pizza, and James Brayshaw, who George Levin describes, I think he has the emotional depth of a sock puppet or something like that. George Levin described his commentary as, he said something about gourmet pizzas, and Warne orders Channel 9 to do a poll on which pizza is the best. Dirty pizza, old style pizza, and things like that. And there is a 5 minute clip of Warren Slater and James Brayshaw just talking about pizza. They don't give a damn about what is happening in the cricket match, and they're like, yeah, yeah, India's trying. Michael Slater tries to commentate on the match, and Shane Warne brings him back to pizza. Any other guy, any other commentator, if you would have done that, people would have bashed saying, talked about the cricket, but Shane Warne could get away with this, and this is 10, 6, 7 years, maybe 10 years after retirement.
Not get away with it. He makes it fun. That's the thing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. The reason why he's able to get away with it is he's engaging.
There used to be a reality show, I think either in England or Australia, called I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. Right? He was on it. He was on it. And in all seriousness, he propounded the theory that we have not descended from monkeys, we have descended from aliens. This is Shane Warne. Like, the guy is interesting in whatever he did. He meant it. He absolutely fucking meant it.
So,
so what is amazing about Warne is, Warne की commentary अगर आप शांति से सुनो, if you observe what he's doing in the commentary box, because the last few series that he was doing commentary on, I would actually listen to him. So he has obviously got one of the sharpest cricketing minds, which people don't realize. But again, see what makes commentary lovable or amazing. So maybe I'll give you an analogy from mixed martial arts. So in mixed martial arts, there is this constant debate when the UFC does pay-per-views, right? So what should be the commentary combo? Like there's John Anik who does play-by-play, arguably I think the greatest play-by-play guy in mixed martial arts. He is the great. But then Joe Rogan, see, people don't realize Joe Rogan famous kaise hua? Famous was Fear Factor se, but he was the guy who did commentary for mixed martial arts. UFC. That was his thing. That was Joe Rogan's thing. Now there is always the debate that who does it with Joe. So is it going to be Daniel Cormier or Michael Bisping or there is this another guy? So Dominic Cruz. Dominic Cruz is your typical, very serious, technical. He'll do his homework on the fighter. He fought here, here, here. But the thing is, the most fan-endearing thing is when Daniel Cormier and Joe Rogan get together because they have banter. Now the banter, the closest thing that I have enjoyed to Shane Warne's commentary and the banter he does with Bumble, especially when he's with Bumble. Bumble is just, a legend by himself, is Virender Sehwag. When I hear him in the Hindi commentary, like Sehwag would do these things. So people always, there are great players. I think Shane Warne के level के great players आपको बहुत मिलेंगे cricket में. मैं नहीं बोल रहा हूँ leg spinner, मैं बोल रहा हूँ players. But what makes Warne the greatest was the personality, not the cricketing art. That's the thing. Yeah. Because you can find a great all-rounder like Jacques Kallis. I think in terms of skill set and contribution to a match, Jacques Kallis has had immense contributions too. But the personality of Warne just adds to the... It's like, do you think John McEnroe, if you would have not had that, you cannot be serious, right? If you did not have that aspect to John McEnroe, would he have been that loved or hated or whatever? Is my question.
No, and then there is another aspect about Warne also, another imperfection. See, Sachin and Lara were the greatest of all times, but they were not good captains. Sachin's captaincy was, record was there to be seen. Same with Brian Lara, not as good. Warne was always seen as the captain that never was for Australia. He was the vice captain for a year and a half, but for reasons, that better are known to Australian cricket and conflicts with coaches and selectors, he was only captain for a handful of...
No. The selectors were like, boss, इसका हर 6 महीने में एक लड़की बाहर आके बोलती है मेरा अफेयर चला है, वॉर्न के साथ मेरा अफेयर चला है. You guys have forgotten Warne. I'm telling you, Aadit, from 95 onwards, every 6 months there's a Shane Warne controversy. So the Aussie selectors were like, boss, we can't have this in our captaincy. We can't do this.
Yeah, but
after the play, Steve Waugh had mythified the Australian captaincy, right? You couldn't have a Warne.
Because Steve Watt taken it to another level. So Alan Border was your captain grump, your everyday, like give it back to the opposition. Then Mark Taylor was a step up from Alan Border, and then Steve Waugh was just legendary, right? So you're right that Shane Warne. But after what we saw Shane Warne do to the Rajasthan Royals team and to many other teams as a mentor, as a coach, as an analyst, do you think he was probably the greatest captain that Australia never had?
No, he probably was. But the thing is, the Aussies, that Aussie team used to operate. I mean, it's not that Warne is not contributing to the strategy of the team, right? Maybe it would have been. I mean, we say, is he the greatest captain they never had? But well, look, between Steve Waugh's winning record is 4.5 wins for every loss in Test cricket. It's a ridiculous record. Yeah. Ponting is 3.8 to every loss. Okay, so you can say he's the best captain they never had, but how much more of a record could he have created, man? I mean,
he couldn't have. No, he couldn't have. And the bench strength. I mean,
they didn't miss a World Cup during that time. So, yeah, I mean, I think it would have been more fun having won, but they didn't look for it, right? I mean,
it would have. The camera, he would have been Virat Kohli before Virat Kohli became Virat Kohli with a camera dedicated to him on the field.
Anecdote I read, and I'm gonna recommend this particular because that's like Warne is so. You know, he had a mural. He had a mural painted and put in his study. You've got to, if you could pull up that mural, it's so funny. It's so funny that it's so classic Warne that I can't even begin to describe it. But there's an article about that mural in the Guardian by Jonathan Liu, who's a terrific writer, of October 2020, right? In which he describes another anecdote from the Ashes Test series of 2005. So at the end of the Ashes Test series, these guys are sort of sitting around, and Gilchrist says, well, at least we can tell our kids that we were part of the greatest series ever, right? And
this is it, right?
Ponting apparently says, I know, I'll tell you what it is. Ponting apparently says, can't be the greatest, we lost, and he's pissed off about it. But Warne then turns around, lights a cigarette, and says, look, what makes us different is that we're Australia. At the end of the day, who's going to ask about Ian Bell or frickin' Ashley Giles? Ian Bell will remain Ian Bell. Ashley Giles will remain Ashley Giles, right? But we are Australia. I'm Shane Warne, you're Ricky Ponting, you're Adam Gilchrist. We'll be remembered. Don't worry about it. It's just a series. That's the. I'm going to just describe this in Shane Warne's words, right? Look at the pretentious rubbish here. Look at the people on this mural, right? So these two in between, that's Chris Martin and Michael Clark, his two best friends.
Yeah.
His other best friend was Ed Sheeran. He used to have dinner with Elton John. Russell Crowe used to phone call him whenever he had a shoulder injury during the shooting of Gladiator. I mean, Warne was a rock star, dude. So anyway, this is how he says. Right here. I'll run you through a couple of the names Warne said. So there's
and this is the Guardian has clipped out the woman here because that's a very artsy picture. So this is the Guardian's picture where they've clipped out the mural into half. But this is the full mural.
So this is how he describes it. He says, so that's either Pam Anderson or I'm forgetting which one it is. But anyway, so he says, so there's Bruce Springsteen and myself just chilling in the corner having a drink. Springsteen's got a cricket ball in his hand. He's just asking questions about cricket. The legend Mick Jagger, he's just sitting in the pool chilling. Then you've got Frank Sinatra and Muhammad Ali having a bit of a tune, just singing along. Then JFK is just mixing with Sharon Stone and Marilyn Monroe. Yeah. Two of my closest friends, Chris Martin and Michael Clark, just having a bit of a chat. I'll tell you what, the artist has looked after Pup with those guns. You see, this is so pretentious, right?
Is this Imran Khan?
No, that's Springsteen. That's what I was.
Oh, that's Springsteen. Yeah. Oh, sorry, because I didn't see, and I think Jack Nicholson is the craziest of them all.
So it's so pretentious. He's got two very close friends, people he knows in there, right? And then there are other people that he knows somewhere here. And then all of these great sort of legends whom he has no contact with, but with Warne, he wants you to think he knows them because he otherwise knows. He knew the entire rock fraternity. Like he had these people on speed dial. They would contact. Shane Warne was at one time. I don't think it's disputable. Was the most famous Australian in the world.
Probably still is. I
Not
honestly
Kylie
don't
Minogue,
know.
not Kylie Minogue, not Russell Crowe. Russell Crowe may be a Kiwi, but I think he's an Aussie. Not
Yeah.
Kylie Minogue, not Russell Crowe, none of them. He was the most famous Australian in the world.
Someone said that the Times in London had 14 pages on Warne when he like died last week. I don't know whether like I don't know where I heard that because I've been listening to so many documentaries and things. And I would urge everyone. I've tweeted the link to it. It's an hour 42 minutes long. You must watch the Fox Sport tribute to Shane Warne. It is beautiful what he meant to Australia and stuff. Michael Vaughan was another person who was very close to Shane Warne. He's again the banter guy. So that's why I loved watching the Fox cricket coverage because they had Michael Vaughan for all series, like for the India series as well. And his banter, and Michael Vaughan almost took the similar position to what Tony Gregg used to take in Channel 9, that he was this British Englishman who would always take the opposing team's side and get under Warne's nerves. And you should just see like him, Harsha Bhogle and Shane Warne, when those three were in the commentary box during the India-Australia tours of 2018, or when Isha Guha, either they had the most fun. And you can see the camaraderie, right? So sometimes that's what I talk to my folk, like I talk to folks in India, and over here in US we get the Australian feed, so we got to listen to Warne a lot more than like in India you get the Indian feed, which is they were doing commentary from Mumbai in the India Australia Test series that just concluded last year. So you should see Shane Warne. Like even though Australia was losing and he was absolutely pissed about it, he loved that Rishabh Pant was giving it back to the Aussies. He loved a good fight. So similar attitude that he had to Kevin Peterson or Andrew Flintoff. Yes, he hated the fact that the Poms were beating him, but at least someone was giving it back to the Aussies. So that was Warne, the personality. So Kushal, I want you to talk about this. We're coming to Ashes 2005 now, and this is, I call it Warne's Ashes because he single-handedly, like we said, rescued Australia. And this, no better delivery than this to show the genius of Shane Warne. I mean, that whole series, he's taken 40 wickets, but just look at this. This is the magic ball to Andrew Strauss.
Yeah, Henry Strauss. What a ball! Holy shit!
Ah,
Did you see how he
This
skipped?
is after England made 400 in a day.
Uh huh.
yeah, I mean, look at that turn.
Just look at the ball, man.
It pitches, I think, what 2 feet outside off stump, maybe more, and
Yeah.
and then it hits leg stump. That's unbelievable.
But that one's
You-
out of the rough. That one's out of the rough.
No, but
Another
still, the
thing,
speed, the speed
another
at
thing
which
I
it
would like to
spins,
add
right?
here. I think it was the. I think it was the another aspect of his hair. Nobody pays
Yeah.
attention to his hair. Look at Warne's hair. Who remembers Warnie's hair in the first test? Oh my God! What the hell was that?
It was like someone had like tried to do like that mohawk, but stopped halfway or something like
No,
that. And
Warnie had a mullet in the first match. In the first
oh,
match,
you're
he had
talking
a
about his
proper
first
mullet.
ever. No, I'm talking about the 2005 Ashes, because by that he had moved from the mullet to the mohawk, and like it was all
Yeah.
sort of he was Boris Johnson before Boris Johnson happened. Like literally. Also, do you remember Warne? Like then, probably like he even made jokes about it in the Night Watchman about hair implants and hair treatments and stuff. And then 2 years or 3 years ago, he showed up wearing a Peaky Blinders hat.
Oh.
And
I remember that.
he wore that through I think it was during the India series. He wore it through
Yeah.
an entire test match series. And the Australians, I was like, what the hell is this? And Mark Howard said, any one of us, if they had showed up wearing this rubbish, the producer would have been like, wear that thing off, take that thing off. But the producer was like, good hat, Warne, good hat. And the joke was that whatever was below the hat, Warne didn't want to show, so he kept the hat on throughout the test match. It was the most Shane Warne thing ever, and this is 12 years after retirement.
You remember the phase when his teeth were the whitest element on earth, and his
Yes.
face was orange. And his
And
face
the
was
stupid.
orange. Well,
Yeah,
Warne,
yeah, yeah. And orange face with a zinc
hang
thing.
on. You talk about the IPL, right? I'm telling you, and Jared Kimber in one of these podcasts I shared on my Twitter feed makes a wonderful case for Warne is also responsible for how big the IPL became in its first season.
100%.
Oh yes.
He was a theme of the so he was the only foreign cricketer who was one of those titans or those special players in a franchise, right? So Tendulkar to Bombay, Sehwag to Delhi, Yuvraj to Punjab, Dravid to Bangalore, Lakshman to
Nikhil, you
Hyderabad, and
remember
Warne
how
to
Ravi
Rajasthan.
Shastri introduced him in the ceremony in Wankhede? You remember how Ravi Shastri had introduced him?
Yeah.
I didn't actually watch
And
any
the
of them.
crowd roar when Warne came in. Only
Yeah,
two people
yeah.
got the crowd roar. Number
Yeah.
one, Tendlia. Number two, Warne, he got a bigger roar than every other Indian player.
You know what his economy rate was in that first season?
5.5 था ना?
नहीं इतना तो कोई नहीं कर पाएगा T20
I think
7.2
6.5 or 7, something like that.
7.2 with all the tons of wickets he took. And who was his number one strike bowler?
Who? Siddharth Trivedi.
No, it was a Pakistani, Sohail Tanveer.
Oh, Sohail Tanveer. Yeah, Sohail Tanveer.
Sohail
Classic
Tanveer.
Warne.
Yes.
Classic Warne. He's born and won the IPL with a Pakistani spearhead.
And the two people at top, right? Graham Smith, who no one thought that Graham Smith would be this brilliant IPL player, and a second guy that most people won't remember, Swapnil Asnodkar, a player from Goa that was in a Romesh Kanuvitharna type roles. कि भाई तू आके just सिर्फ फोड़. Now,
He
बेचारे
made Rahane. Rahane's batting changed playing with Warne.
no, why? How Rahane? Ravindra Jadeja. He
Jadeja
made
totally made him. He made Jadeja's mentality. Created Jadeja's mentality.
Yeah.
Jadeja, if you remember, 2000. It was when Tendulkar made the 175. Jadeja had a really, really bad pressure situation cameo. Right? Tendulkar obviously mishit the paddle shot and got caught at final leg, but Jadeja had created the pressure by wasting a lot of deliveries. Warne literally changed Jadeja's mindset, made him into this exceptional cricketer.
Interesting. So,
By the way, later that year, he also created the BBL. Why? Because he lands up at the BBL and he has an on-field fight with Marlon Samuels. Right?
Yeah.
Shirt
On-field.
incident.
So it gets so bad, Samuels throws a bat at him. Yeah. It's nuts. And he's doing commentary at a time, and while he's doing commentary, he's bowling to Brendan McCullum. He says, I'm going to bowl him around his legs. Right?
Yeah.
He actually bowls a slider. He does not bowl the leg spinner. He bowls a slider because he's bluffing, because he thinks maybe McCullum can hear him. But McCullum makes the mistake of going across his stumps, and he does get bowled around his legs. So now the ball is viral all over the world saying, hey, Warne said I'm going to bowl him around his legs, and he bowled him around his legs.
Exactly.
Warne was massive. Warne was massive. He was globally massive.
So before we end the podcast, we're going into the last 15-20 minutes of it. I want to talk a little bit about what first Mr. Gavaskar said, and then we are essentially Indian cricket fans, so we have to talk about Warne v Tendulkar and the whole, the respect they had for each other and the magnificent battles they had. I just think Gavaskar was being uncharitable to Warne. Like, I know people are saying that Rajdeep shouldn't have asked this question and so forth, but Gavaskar could have avoided that question. Now that's another thing, that the Indian commentators are so overwrought by even questioning anything that Mr. Gavaskar says anywhere that no one will ever say a word. Like, Gaurav Kapoor ka podcast 22 Yans is a brilliant podcast, but he doesn't go one episode without paying homage to Mr. Gavaskar, right? So all of them who speak about speaking truth to power won't talk about the senior most commentator. I think what was the point of saying this? First of all, there's no point in comparing Warne and Murli, because I think Warne was, this is in my opinion, if not the same, at best he was a better bowler than Muttiah Muralidharan, because of the reasons we talked about. About the competition he had in wickets, the kind of wickets he had to bowl on, right? Sri Lankan wickets are not the same as Australian wickets. They are a lot more conducive to spin bowling. This is nothing to take away from what Murli was. But to say that, the Indian spinners were greater, I mean, I love Indian spinners, but I honestly don't know who was greater than Shane
They're
Warne.
not. Aadit, they're not. Vaughan was
Yeah,
the greatest spinner the game ever had.
yeah, I know, agree. So that's my point.
I don't know what you want to discuss here. Like, it's a very simple thing. Gavaskar was talking rubbish. End of story. I mean, there's nothing else.
Yeah. No, no, no,
You're
no, no.
telling
But
me.
Gavaskar was
No, no, no.
talking.
Kushal, explain this to me. By what slanted metric is Bishan Bedi better than Shane Warne? Because it wasn't just Murli that he said the Indian spinners that came earlier were better than Warne. This is what he said.
Come on. I mean, come on.
It's
I mean,
madness.
Vaughan.
It doesn't even merit comment.
Yes, Vaughan is the greatest spinner in the history of cricket, and for someone to beat Shane Warne will not just need statistical brilliance. It will need the personality that a Shane Warne had.
The X
And
factor, man.
वो कहाँ
You
से
need the
लाओगे?
X factor.
वो कहाँ से लाओगे जब उसने हर्षल गिब्स को बोल्ड किया और उसने अपनी पूरी टीम को पंप किया? वो कहाँ से
That
लाओगे जब उसने डैरल
he won
कलिनन की
that
जिंदगी बर्बाद
semi-final
कर
in
दी?
that moment. He won that semi-final in that moment.
You cannot. You can see. Even Vaughan played in an era where there was an absolute goat right besides him in McGrath.
In McGrath.
Vaughan played in an era where 50% of his wickets ka jane ka probability were just because he was playing with McGrath. Murli
And not
did
just
not
that,
have-
yeah. Who are your first change bowlers? The backup bowlers are Brett Lee, Jason Gillespie. I mean, what an attack
भाई
they had.
तू एंडी बिकल को भूल गया है.
नहीं
एंडी
नहीं
बिकल भी आके विकेट ले लेता
not
था
even
उस time पे,
that.
Michael
Andy
Kasparovic.
Bickle, Michael Kasparovic. I mean, there are so many. Damian Fleming, the only man.
Early on, he also had McDermott.
McDermott,
Merv Hughes, Big Merv.
the Merv Hughes, yeah. The only person, Damian Fleming, who's still continues to be mad a little bit at Warne for dropping his hat trick, straightforward chance. And there was a very funny clip. Just look up one drop of Damian Fleming against India. But
Oh, yeah.
jokes apart, and moving to Sachin versus Warne, right? Like that Bradman photo, like that was the first picture a lot of Indian cricket fans tweeted, where Bradman essentially just called them the greatest batsman and the greatest bowler. To when he called them over for his
I won't
90th
debate
birthday.
that.
Yeah, I wouldn't debate it either. But because I think the thing was, they were the reason why Sachin and Warne were. Sachin was a completely different personality off the field. Warne was a totally different personality off the field. But both had that thing that whenever they came on the field, they would grab the match by the scruff of the neck and try to change it single-handedly. Now,
It's a clash of
approach-
that thing that I said earlier, right? Sachin Tendulkar is also the most important person in the room.
exactly. Yeah,
But such a
that sums it
contrasting
up.
personality, na. Sachin Tendulkar is such a calm personality. मतलब कुछ drama
Yeah,
नहीं
so
उसके
you can
surrounding में.
anything can be magnetic, Kushal, right? You can be magnetic in different ways, right? I mean, there is a quiet
Yeah.
aura, there's a louder aura. So they were polar opposites in that sense. But Tendulkar is also the most important person in the room. There's just no doubt. From the age of 16, everybody is looking at the greatest batting talent they've seen, right? I mean, nobody's seen Bradman.
Yeah. And doing all sorts of crazy things, right? Like the what people remember, Indian fans will remember the 1998 Chennai second innings. Australians will remember the first innings where Sachin tried to go aggressive on one and one got him out the second or third ball. He hit him for a four.
One caveat to the Tendulkar-Warne rivalry is as good as they were through the 2000s, they were at their absolute peak in the 90s, right? And the toughest decade
Yeah.
to play to bat in, certainly. Even to bowl spin, because it's not like tracks were turners. He turned the ball. That's a different matter. Because
Yeah.
tracks weren't flat out turners. There was a lot of seam and swings. They didn't play in Australia between 91 and 99. And that's a really, really sad thing. Because Warne's flipper really worked in Australia, really worked in England. It wasn't as effective in the subcontinent, not effective on softer pitches. Right? So if Tendulkar never really played a proper inning against Warne with the Warne flipper in play.
Yeah.
Properly. But I will tell you where he did play it and what he did to it. So do you remember? I'll give you two shots. One is the 96 World Cup when he made that just gorgeous 90 of 78 balls against Australia in our course. The first ball Warne bowls is a flipper, but he doesn't get it right. And you can't get it right because there's not enough zip off the Wankhede track, right?
Yep.
Tendulkar flat bats it to long on for four.
Straight back.
Right?
Yeah.
Because he's just got that much more time on it. And the exact same thing happens. There was a world tourney that happened in New Zealand in the mid 90s at some point. I think South Africa won it eventually. And he smashed Warne for 19 in 1 over. So he would attack McGrath, but with safety. With Warne, it was just, I am going to dominate you. Because he had that respect for Warne. That if Warne gets on top of this team, he will run through the team. He will run through them. You need to push him back foot immediately. And again, Warne bowls a flipper, and Tendulkar again flat back straight field. So
Yeah, and
everybody else is getting out to that. And by the way, flat back off the front foot. Everybody, he must have analyzed you getting out to the flipper by moving to the back foot. If you get onto the back foot because you see the length, you're screwed.
no, and I think he said something about in 90s or something that he could get Lara out a lot more times, out thinking him than he could get Sachin out. And the reason why they went at each other, Sachin and Warne, were because they wanted to. They knew that if they let the other person dominate, they'll be all over it. Before we end with
But I
final,
think in the case of Sachin and Lara and Warne, this
Mhm.
relation, I think Warne was letting Sachin get into his head far more than he ever got Lara get into his head, in my opinion. I think Warne himself, in many ways, got very really psyched out in a weird way with Sachin than he ever did with Lara. Because if you think about it, there is another player who attacked Warne a lot. That was Hansi Cronje.
yeah,
He did too.
yeah,
And it was
Hansi
just
Cronje,
one of the.
But Kushal, with Cronje, you don't have the fear of volume of runs, right? He may have a patch
yeah.
where he's attacking you. You're not worried about him making 200, 150, 175 the way Tendulkar and Lara were. Lara, by the way, his 277, that legendary 277 when he got run out in Sydney, that Warne's in the team when he makes that 277. I think Warne is in the team. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll have to check as well. I'm not sure either. But I think that's. But you're right. I think the quality, also the quality of shots, right? Like, who cricketer has the audacity to flat bat flipper to long on the way Sachin did, right? So I think it was the
Listen,
audacity, the
Tendulkar
flourish.
in those 90s, Tendulkar he's a beast. He's a demon. You cannot
Yeah,
bowl anything. Tendulkar did not have a weakness. He could get himself out, but Tendulkar did
yeah,
not have a weakness.
yeah. And I
Also,
mean, to
just to give one more credit to Shane Warne, have people noticed that outside of Warne, no other leg spinner really had a really, not that Warnie's flipper after his shoulder injury was good, because he had actually pretty much ditched it, I think, because of his shoulder injury. But look at all the other leg spinners. Mushtaq Ahmed never had a good flipper. At best, Mushtaq Ahmed had a googly.
That's right.
Kumble had a flipper, but his flipper and his normal ball, I don't know
He
what the
didn't have a leg
difference was.
spinner, yaar.
हाँ मैंने वही तो बोला ना, उसकी फ्लिपर
Yeah.
क्या थी और उसकी नॉर्मल बॉल थी, मतलब सिर्फ पेस का फर्क होगा. So think about it, no other leg spinner even today or before
This is
Warne
what I
actually
said
had
at
a
the
great
start. There
flipper.
can't be any competition on the issue of leg spin.
yeah,
There cannot be
and
any
and
competition.
and actually,
That's when,
Kumble became.
that's when Aadit still had his disease of saying one of the best, right? You cannot call Shane Warne one of the best leg spinners, boss. This is like saying Earth is one of the inhabitable planets. I mean, if you want, you could live on Mars, buddy, but I'm going to stick with that.
Can't say for sure. I'll defer that question to Elon Musk if he has any other thoughts about that. But no, but I think Kumble, and I love Anil
No,
Kumble. I
but
think
let me add to that.
he became a more potent bowler after he developed the wrong one on Australian tracks. And that's it later in his career. But I'm not comparing Kumble and Warne. I think
No, so,
we
so, so
we
what's
would
the,
be
so
unfair
what's,
to
what's
Kumble
the
also.
difference? The differential is Kumble will not have dismissals around the batsman's legs and very few straight pat caught behinds, right?
Yeah,
Warne will have a lot of straight pat caught behinds and dismissals around the legs. But the thing that Fizz what that used to do was much as you saw with the around the legs dismissal you showed earlier. If you see any of his other around the leg dismissals, and there's one in particular of Kevin Peterson when Peterson misses a sweep. That ball is so full, it's literally past the bat when it bounces. Okay, he misses literally
Yeah.
a full toss. It's past the bat when it bounces. It's very close to the crease, which is well outside leg, and it hits the off stump. That's an astonishing amount of spin for that much distance of travel. You know, so the deviation off the pitch must be like a few degrees, and he would
Probably.
do that all day long, not the odd ball, all day long.
This is. I mean, we can say he was truly the wizard from Oz. I mean, really, like the kind of things he did. Because this Kevin Peterson, if I'm not mistaken, this is in the 2006 Adelaide Test match, another Test match
Yes,
where
yes, yes, yes.
everyone thought this was going for a draw.
Won that test. He won that
Yeah,
test.
and he just came and just absolutely nuts, and he had that demoralizing effect to Englishmen that McGrath had to Indian openers. Like they would get transfixed when one would come. Similar to मुझे पता है. I mean, I had mortal whenever Glenn McGrath used to run in and bowl. I'm like ये खत्म. एक wicket लिया and I'm like this is game over. India is done, cooked. So, but
I'll say this: if you're going to end at some a very
in the
short
next
period of
5 minutes,
time,
yes, yeah,
I'll tell you what I think about the biggest thing I can say about Warne. Warne is not Indian. Warne is not someone. I mean, I like cricketers for their cricket, and I love Warne's personality, but I wasn't really following Warne's Instagram feed or his bout with Marlon Samuels or Liz Hurley. I mean, when I heard the Liz Hurley story, I was just like, "What? That's just so Warne, right?"
yeah.
But I swear to you, when I heard the news, I was heartbroken. And I'll be heartbroken for a long, long time because Shane Warne, bona fide genius in every respect, man. He is something extraordinary, something special, and he will be. Shane Warne is eternal. Take it from me in writing. Guys like
Absolutely.
a lot of other cricketers that we think are great cricketers, legendary cricketers we've seen in our lifetimes, they'll be forgotten. Shane Warne will not be forgotten. Vivian Richards will not be forgotten. Tendulkar will not be forgotten. These are the elite of the elite.
Yeah.
I'm very sorry to say this to a lot of fans out there. Rahul Dravid, at some point people they'll remember him, but not the way these guys are going to be remembered forever and ever. These are
Yeah.
absolute elite.
No,
I was not,
absolutely.
and in his death also, so typically Warne, right? He has gone in a way in which you're left gasping for so much more, which is much like it used to be when he was bowling. You were gasping for so much more. Look at the whole aura. Right? Who else has walked up to the stumps to bowl?
And
There's not
it's
even a
it's a
hop. There's a hop right at the end. He used to stand right at the top of his bowling lineup and let the batsman absorb the pressure. Let him
and there are
absorb.
two things, right? Are you a kid of the 90s or 80s if you haven't imitated Shane Warne's action, or in an Australian accent tried to say bowling Warney or bowling Shane in the most weirdest possible? We all have, right? Anyone who's saying they haven't is either not a cricket fan or completely bullshitting. And Adam Gilchrist and Ian Healy said it the best, that we too had the best view of the king's exploits. And Adam Gilchrist said there was this one keeper who had one test match, but apart from that, it was just the heels and eye. And what the sad part was, the person who loved to surround himself with people, the way he passed away all by himself in his room, it was tragic. It was way too early. And even though sometimes at times his commentary on Fox in the last few years could get a little annoying, because in England he was a different commentator, he was an analyst, right? In Fox he would get into this old matey Australian way, which was fun for a while, but then part of you were like that, let's move on to the game.
Yeah, no,
But you
it
could
works
not.
well when he has those more sober English commentators next to him. Like that contrast works well. Just
Yeah,
like
which is
Kushal
why.
said, works very well with David Lloyd, maybe with Nasser Hussain, maybe with Michael Atherton. But it becomes
Or even.
too much of a matey problem when it's
Yeah,
Slater and him and all these other.
yeah, but that's why when he moved from Nine to Fox Sports, and even Michael Vaughan, Nisha Goa, Harsha Bogle, they kind of changed him up. And someone like a Kerry O'Keefe, who is outstanding with all his
Hey, I
jokes
love
and
man.
stuff.
Kerry O'Keefe is just wonderful.
Yeah. So
But I
Kushal,
don't know.
your
For
closing
me,
thoughts. Yeah.
I tweeted about it. I was like, there are two sporting chants in the crowd that are immortalized for me. One was Sachin Sachin, and not across the country, Sachin Sachin of Wankhede. That chant
Mhm.
that will reverberate every single time you watch cricket. And the chant of Warne, Warne. I mean, every time the man would go, let alone the man would go. Even if he's shown on the screen, the Aussies would start shouting "Money, money," even if he's a commentator. And that's no man. Look, we're all flawed human beings. We're all flawed human beings. Shane Warne's flaws were very much in the open because public figures and their flaws are always dissected. But to have your flaws and you have your quirks to be exposed, but still be loved the way Shane Warne was loved, to me that was his most endearing factor. I I still say this, like even today, if somebody goes through my YouTube search history when it comes to cricket, the most viewed thing that I have in my YouTube search history is Shane Warne, not Sachin Tendulkar. I love Sachin. I love Sachin probably a lot more than Warne. But you want to watch Warne. And
Yeah,
that was the thing about Warne. And not just how he bowled the ball. फोर लगा है उसको और शेन वॉन एक्सप्रेशन ऐसे देता था ये तो अभी आउट हो जाता था ये तो
yeah,
गलती से उसका फोर लग गया दैट टू मी बट बिफोर आई रैप अप I don't know if people have watched it, but Book My Show has his latest movie that had come in January this year.
yeah.
Please watch it. And
It's
I
on
say
Amazon
this to
Prime as
everybody.
well. It's on Amazon Prime. It's called Shane.
No,
It's a
not in
documentary.
India. In India, it's on Book My Show streaming. Outside India, it's on Amazon Prime.
Nay, it's not even in America. I actually wrote to. I would never do this, but I tweeted to Amazon US saying, "Yaar, ab to the given the news we heard, at least make it for free viewing on Amazon. Yeah, on Amazon US. I want to really watch it. The Shane documentary. One thing I'll
Please,
leave our.
everybody, I insist, if you can watch that, you can rent it for like 100 something and buy it for 399. I to bought it because this is something I'm gonna treasure for the rest of my life. I'm gonna buy, and I say buy it because you ought to buy it because if you love Wani, you should have it all the time on you, and you can watch it again and again. Believe me, you will watch it, and if you love the man, you will always be emotional because that's
Emotional about it.
how much of a connect he had with his fans. And I know all three of us are hardcore Wani fans. So please, everybody watch it.
The first thing we did was talk to each other. I think I texted on our group message thing on DM about one and was like, let's do a podcast. And we've been planning to do this for the last few days. But one thing I want to say, guys, we talk about the Boxing Day test in MCG. It was not a regular feature till 1980, and then even then, the 1989, I don't think it happened. But it's a very recent phenomenon. But post 1992, you had like Shane Warne, like the Victorian, almost dominating many Boxing Day Test matches. None more so in 2006 2007 season when he took his 700th wicket on that. And Mark Taylor had this wonderful instance that they wanted Bill Lawry, another Victorian who loved Shane Warne, to call that. So Bill had close to an hour and a half stint in the morning session. Like they just kept him on. And then he had to go for a lunch. So he walked off, and 10 minutes later, Mark Taylor is now there, and he gets to call Shane Warne's 700th wicket again, which is Andrew Strauss, beautifully deceived in the air and clean bowled. Uh, it, Mark Taylor almost described it as that was his journey as a test cricketer for Australia, culminating. I mean, Sydney Test was the last test he played, but if there was one moment that you could say Shane Warne had built up to where he would end his career for Australia, probably that was that 700th wicket on his home ground, fairy tale ending, and then going on to become a mentor. Waqar Yunus said that he saw Pakistani player not doing well. He drove up from Dubai to Sharjah just to coach the Pakistani player on his own dime, just because he supported leg spinners throughout the world. Are we going to get a personality like that who feels passionately about leg spinners everywhere in the world? I don't think so. It's a tragedy. I honestly don't know what the world if the world ever knows what we have lost so fast. He probably had 15 or 20 years more of mentorship to give. But farewell, King. You'll be missed everywhere, but especially by all three of
And
us.
Nikhil was right. He went away in typical Wani style too. That was Wani.
Yeah.
He
In
had
the
to
one
go
of the
this way.
most
That was his
the
thing.
most expensive one of the most expensive resorts in Thailand. He was there for like a 10
And
day
at
sort
this
of thing
age, I mean, I don't know
at
if
this
you've
age.
heard Ian
No,
Apple
it's
on.
the suddenness. He leaves you wanting more. He always leaves you wanting more. Shane Warne.
Yeah,
Always.
that's
Pure,
typical Bonnie. Ian Chappell was once asked by Shane Warne about Shane Warne, and he said, considering Bonnie's lifestyle and eating habits and everything, 70 would have been amazing, but 52 is still young even by Bonnie standards.
yeah, exactly. I heard that. I think he was incredible, and he was genuinely shattered. And in all this, we've not even had time to talk about Rod Marsh, another legend who passed away, another
Yeah.
No, no,
mentor to a lot of us.
listen, we aren't Australians. We didn't get, in an odd way, because of the way cable TV progressed in India and the cricket boom, we probably saw more cricket in India than the Aussie and the English fans did in their respective countries. Because
Yeah,
every match used to be telecast in India, right? Everything used to be telecast in India. And
yeah,
listen, Shane Warne can't be put in words. He's too big. Tendulkar can't be put in words. He's too big for me. I mean, Federer's like that for me. These are not people that I can measure the loss of. I'll be heartbroken for a long time for the loss of Shane Warne. He should have gone
Same.
35 years later, quietly as you do with a natural death, so that we could write measured paeans about you and had 35 more years of this craziness. For him to have gone this way, it feels
But
like
this
he
is
was.
one. But this is one, right? Be it his legacy or obituary, it's always ends with
Yeah.
a huge flourish and leaves you gasping for more, as you beautifully put, Nikhil.
Yep. So true.
Thank you guys for joining. This has been wonderful. Guys, please like, comment, share, subscribe. Let us know what you think about Warning, what you think about cricket. Like we said, this is not even just about cricket, just about Australia, just about the 90s. It's just our love and our for Shane Warne. So, with that, guys, we'll be back next week with more. Till then, from all of us, it's goodbye and thanks for watching.